Yeah.
Okay, hi there again. This is Nicoli Alexander. Going to show you a few tricks about making little simple pendants. Now this is a partial carving that I got, but I enhanced this eagle by doing a little bit of engraving on the feathers to make them stand out and look more like feathers, and then I burnt it with a very small torch on the outside of the feathers. Now this is a golden eagle, not a bald eagle. Now what I'm going to do, what I did was I took a crease right out of the side all the way around at the top. That's where the bezel will sit on. And I did that with this tool right here, this guy. And it's going to stink when you do that, so just be prepared for that, because it's going to smell like hair burning, and that's exactly what it is. So, and now what we're going to do is I'm going to take bezel, which is the wide strap bezel, and I'm going to fold it around that little crease till it's tight, and then I'm going to mark where it comes together, right at the seam. And now just take and cut along that line that I just marked. And now to put this together so we can solder this bezel. On bezels, you always use hard solder. Always, always, always. There's no exceptions to the rule. And the reason for that is the silver bezel is pure silver. And if you don't use the purest silver content with the least amount of zinc, you end up getting a gray line after a little while wearing the piece, which shows out at being oxidation where that alloy metal is. So if you use hard solder, it's much better. Now I'm just using acetylene air. It's a simple little acetylene air tank is all it is. And this is hard solder. And with my hard solder, what I do a lot of times is I do a double loop like that, so they know it, make a figure 8 at the end. Then I know it's always hard solder. You always know what it is then. Now all you do is, you see where I'm putting this solder right there? Right on the edge, right on the very edge of the seam. Now what I'm watching is I'm watching the color of the flux. It turns clear, boom. See how fast that goes? You just touch it and zip, it goes right across the seam. Now the trick to having it do that is, and by the way, this is sulfuric acid or pickle and just plain water. The reason for doing that is the cleaner the bezel, by taking this and squeezing them flat when you put them together, when the bezel is flat like that, you get a nice clean solder line. Perfect. And now we'll shape it. Let's see here.
Just remember to hold it still in one spot, so
yeah. All right.
You can keep focus.
Yeah. Now I'm just bending it around so it's going to fit on there perfect. All right. Now we'll get a little piece of plate, silver. And that's solder. Here we go. What I'm trying to do is not get too big of a piece of silver there, so that I don't waste a lot of materials cutting it out. Okay, always remember which side goes down. Oops, see, I just screwed up, but I know which side goes down. Flux is your friend. The more flux you use, the better off you are. And when you're soldering, the 3 things you look for when you're soldering on the flux, and you'll know by the color of the flux when your solder is ready to be put down there. Now this is regular easy solder, and I do one single loop like that on that. It's just twisted one time. So with the solder, with the flux on that, what you're looking for is you're going to watch the color of the flux. First it's going to turn white and bubble up, just like that. Then it's going to turn black, then it's going to turn red. And keep your torch moving all the time and keep it away from your seam. Now when it turns red and it's just starting to turn white, You put your solder down in there right near where the seam is, and start your solder flowing from that point. And see how easy that just flowed all the way around there? Once you got the seam down, then the hard solder will not flow out of the seam, and it won't get too hot for the rest of that. So that puts it together very well, very nicely. And then I'm just going to take a pair of tin snips, and I'm going to cut the excess silver off the outside of this.
And they're the good guys. From the producers of Prison Break comes a new A&E drama series, Breakout Kings. There's nothing more dangerous than convict on the run. We decided to...
And then I'm going to take just a flat file. I'm going to file it all the way around. Now, if you notice how I'm doing the filing, where I'm actually having my wrist move like this, that gives you a nice, clean, smooth file line without having little flat facet spaces, which is what you don't want.
This is your opportunity to learn about the 5 types of identity theft and how you can protect yourself and your
Now, this will be a good lesson right here.
1-hour identity
You
theft
put your
seminar
solder
this
in the
Tuesday,
bezel,
March
but
8th at 5:30
where it was supposed to go, but the solder did not flow exactly across the whole seam, leaving a little pit there. Hold on a second and I'll show you once I get this all filed out. We'll go back and we'll fix that. You can see how it's done. It's very easy to fix. Now I'm taking and putting a small bevel on the edge to get the filing marks off of there. Now, if you look very closely,
Well, it's still.
you will see where the hole is, right there. Just a small little hole.
Focus. Come on, baby. Why don't we put it on the thing here and you can point it out.
Here, this is where the flaw is, right there. It's a little tiny hole between where the seam is and the base plate. Just right there.
Boy, this focus just isn't working here.
I'll just zoom back. I'll just point it out.
All right, I see it. I got it.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flux on the outside and on the inside of that. Now I'm just going to set it down there with the seam toward me. Only this time I'm going to use the little tab of Super Easy. And Super Easy, I do 2 loops adjacent, like you do Easy, but 2 loops make it identified that that's Super Easy. Now this will flow very, very quickly. It has more zinc in it, but you're just trying to fill up a little space and it'll mix with the other solder. You put it right down there on that spot, boom, just like that, and it's done. That melts soap at such a low temperature compared to the other materials that it fills things up quite nicely, very quick. Okay, now we need a bale on here. Now what I did was I took a straight strap of metal and I cut from there off one side down that way on the strap and made this kind of shape out of a elongated rectangle. Now with this, then what I'm going to do is take and file off these little points so they're rounded. And then I'm going to take a pair of needle nose pliers. At first, I'm going to take the needle nose, put it up here at the end, and I'm going to bend these down by hand like this.
Round needle nose.
Round needle nose. And I'm going to push these back and forth until they fit just perfect together, just like that.
And you squeeze it from both sides to make it even.
Right, you have to turn it around to make it even so you have the same amount of squeeze on that side as you do on this one, yeah. And that'll put it dead center like that is right there. Now, if one side is a little bit larger than the other, and this is what I generally do, is this is the back side and that's the top side, the front side. So what we're going to do is...
The back side's a little smaller than the front side?
Yeah, so the back side you won't see it at all.
Right.
We'll flux this, we'll flux this.
Go to TWOUNCE.com. Your personal message will be on the radio for everyone to hear.
All right. Now we're going to take Super Easy on this one.
Hi there.
I'm going to heat this up and stick the flux right in, the solder right in the hole, the crack there. See that? I fed it right in there. I'm going to take and put one little tiny piece up there, just like that.
Okay, let's focus. I missed all that.
Okay, see how it globbed up on the end?
Yeah.
It didn't flow all the way down into the piece. I didn't want it to.
All right, just enough to get it melted on.
Just enough to get it melted on there so it doesn't move. Now, I just got to center it. And boom, there's the solder. It just flows just like that. All you gotta do is hold it still so it doesn't move anywhere. Now, the reason why I made that bale so long is that this is a lady's piece. It's going to Peggy here. And ladies like to wear larger chains with more thickness to them, not really thin, tiny little things. So that's why I made that one big. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to take a half round on one side, or half, rounded on that side, flat on this side. I'm going to take the rounded side, put it on the inside of this, and squeeze down and stretch this area out, going both ways. And just make it round so it's all even. And you just squeeze it just a little bit both ways, just like that. Now see how nice that makes that open wide? Now she can put almost any kind of chain that she wants through there, and it'll hang nice and not get caught up on the chain. And it should look just like that. And there's the front side. And because it's going to Peggy, she doesn't know yet, I'm putting a faceted stone on the end of this real quick, because it needs to have one there. So let's get into the prong box. Get a little prong out of here. Okay, these are called heads. Whoop, that I just dropped on the floor. And these are going to hold the stones in place. Now,
Focus on this camera is just not there.
I'm going to get back a little ways farther.
Well, I know, I'm trying to. I think I need to focus less on the focus when I get into a close shot.
Now, we're going to do what's called sweat soldering here. And that means that I'm going to put the solder on the head, on the prongs. Let's see, that's regular easy. We need super easy. And we're using super easy to do this with. You're going to put it right on the bottom of the prongs, just like that. And you don't need a lot. Just
Because
enough.
it's super easy, it's super quick.
Now, the only thing you have to do here is make sure that your prongs are lined up, squared up, so that if you have two lines going this way and two lines going this way with your prongs, they should be squared up like that. Right now, it's got super easy, so we don't have to get too much heat on there. Come on, baby. And when the solder flows, boom, it just goes. And once you've got it down, reheat it again real quickly. Let it seat itself, make sure the solder flowed all the way around, and it did. Put it in the acid, rinse it off, and now we're going to do it. This is what I do as a fast track. You don't have to do this. I'm just showing you because it'll expedite this whole thing, this class. I'm just going to heat this up until it doesn't get real hot, but you just watch it just get slightly warm, and the flux won't glass up on you, and then it'll just get eaten away by the acid very, very quickly. And this is called flashing, acid flashing. Now I just check to make sure that all the flux is gone, and it is. All right. Now I'm going to take a file and run it across the bottom and make sure that this is flat and smooth. All right, now we're going to stretch this out a little bit. That's called a burnisher, a curved burnisher. Then we're going to make sure that the eagle fits in there right. All right. Now this is slightly, which way does it go here? I'll go this way. This is slightly off center. The bale is.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that real quick. And this is the easiest way to do it. And you want to make sure that when you do this, that you're using a third arm or something else to hold down the rest of the bezel so that it doesn't move when you move it, scoot it over just a little bit. And you're just going to scoot it over just a tiny bit. You don't get your flame too hot. Just gotta wait for that solder. Keep your torch away from the prongs and that solder joint. All right.
Takes a steady hand on it.
Yeah, it does. Well, that's why you a lot of times you'll brace. That's why they make these braces like this, so you can lean your arm up against something. Like that's why I have two pins up here, you know, cutting pins, because I can a lot of times put my hands on this one, set my piece right up here with a third arm on top, and have real steady hands. It does take steadiness. You cannot just be jerking things around. You've got to really take your time to make sure that what you're doing is going to be the only time you have to do that. Okay, good. Now we got it centered up. So I'm going to take all the water out of the center there.
Did you torch off all the rest? I guess you didn't need to because there was no flux added.
Yeah, I'd already gotten it all off except for just that one spot.
Right,
so,
okay. Yeah.
And I just moved it over and it all came off when I did that, so.
Well, that's just a nice little tidbit to know.
Yeah,
You do not have to reflux.
If there's any flux, you should reflux it, and I did, but I put a thin layer on there, knowing that when I quenched it, that most of it would flash off.
Okay,
there.
all right.
And if there was any left on there, it would look brown or red.
Rock and roll.
Okay, now that fits in there just perfect. And before we go and put the glue in there, I'm just going to make sure that this is going to be tight all the way around.
Using burnishing tool.
Yeah, another burnishing tool. And that looks pretty good. Now, we're going to mix some epoxies here. And I prefer to use DevCon because it's quality. It dries fairly clear. If you need to have clear, they do have clear. This is just a regular 5-minute that you buy in almost any hardware store.
Right.
But it works fast and it works well. And it doesn't take long for it to set up. And I just use like a little dentist spatula tool like that.
Right.
And you mix it both directions like this, like I'm doing. Make sure it's really mixed up well, because the better it's mixed up, the harder it'll set up.
I mean, everything from UFC fighting to college and pro football, baseball, basketball, hockey, and every play.
Now you don't want to put too much in there because you've got a little bit of space at the top, but you don't want this squeezing out very much on top of the eagle.
It's Buffalo Wild Wings on the hill in Bullhead City. That's where. You ever count the TVs at Buffalo Wild Wings there?
Now I'm just making sure that I got enough, and I didn't have enough on there, so put a little blotch up there.
Hey, if it's sports, we got
Vulcanize everything.
more awards for our food and service than the NFL has losing records. Best sports bar in the Tri-City area. Are you kidding me? Is there really any doubt? Buffalo Wild Wings
All right.
on the hill in Bullhead City. Wings.
Okay, now I got it.
Gotta be here. Everyone else
Now I'm just going to set it here for a few minutes
loves kids, and it's a great place for a fun family night
and let that set up. And make sure you always clean your spatula off right away, because the only other way to get the stuff off of there is if you burn it off later on. And that stinks almost as bad as burnt ivory. Now all we have to do is wait for that, so you can turn it off for a minute.
All right.
Okay, this is healed up nicely now. And as you can see, the bale's a little tipped one way. So you just take those half-round flat pliers that you had before, and you're going to put it on the inside. Put your finger on both sides of the bezel, and just bend it up a little bit on that side. There. Now it's centered. Can you see that? Now we'll cut the seat for the head. And I'm going to use what's called a, this is a barrel burr, a step barrel burr. Very slowly, a little beeswax on your bit, and very slowly I'm going to push down and then wiggle it around. Just go like this a little bit to get that seat nice and seated in there. Now see if we can get you to see that. See how the seats are cut?
And hold it out of the sunlight. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, now the topaz should just pop right in there. Let's see what I did with my tweezers here. Oh. Now I'm just going to sit it up there so it's flat on all four feet or all four prongs where I just got done seating it. Well, come on, cooperate. Wait, booger. Okay. Okay. Now once you get to that point, I'm going to take a pair of parallel pliers and I'm going to squeeze from either side evenly. I'm going to do the same thing that way, opposite sides. And now take the tip of these parallel pliers and just barely grab the top end of the bezel. You're going to put one pair of the tips of the pliers right there behind the girdle, and the other one up on the tip of the prong, and you're going to bend the prong over just a little bit. See how that bent over?
Kind of butter it.
Yeah. Oop. Now we'll do the same thing a little bit the other way. Always go opposite sides. If you do one side, then do the other side opposite it to make sure that the prongs go down evenly. And I know there's more advanced methods of doing this, but most people don't have accessibility to those tools. And this is using the minimum of what you got for the best way you can do it. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to take this burr out. And always take your burr out of your things, that way you don't break them. And I'm going to put what's called a cup burr, and it's rounded on the inside, and that's going to round the end of the tips of the prongs so that they don't get caught on anything, and take a nice even smooth polish when you put the polishing wheel to it. And just rock it around like that. Now you can see by that one how nice this finish puts on the end of that. Do that to all of them. Go all the way around. And this hones them down to keep them from getting caught on clothing and all kinds of things like that. Now I'm just going to make sure that they're all tight. All right, always take your bits out. Here we go.
All right.
Okay, now because this is ivory, you want to be careful about polishing it with too heavy of a buffing compound that gets stuck to the ivory, because you're going to have to scrub it out of the ivory to get it out. And it's better that you don't get it very wet, the ivory. The less it can get it wet, the better. Now this is just bobbing compound, and I'm going to use this to go around all these hard spots that are going to be hard to get to with the other wheels. And try and keep this part of it from being caught up, being dirty. You have more control over this little wheel than you do over a big one. And I think you can see how often I'm putting that compound on there. You have to put it on pretty regular. Basically all I'm trying to do here is get the seam worked out right. The big wheel, the silver that's down on the bezel is pure silver, 999 fine, and the rest is sterling silver, which is 925, 0.925. Now here, you're always going to be looking for one thing when you get to the sterling silver, and that is to get rid of the fire scale. The fire scale is the alloy that comes to the surface of the metal when you solder, and usually that's a copper that they use in the alloying process. And you've got to get that all off of there, because if you leave the fire scale on, it will oxidize faster than the rest of it, leaving little splotchy spots on the surface. You know, all the rest of this we can get with the big wheel. So we'll just jump over to the big wheel over here. First we'll put on the triply, or the bobbing compound. That could be either one, triply or bobbing. Again, I'm trying to make one thing for sure happen, and that's to get rid of all the fire scales. When you get to the prongs, with this big wheel, you're going to do this. You're going to go first this way, then you're going to go that way, go in 4 different directions right against the prongs. Now smooth them down and make it nice so that they don't catch on anything. And then I go around at an angle, catching the inside of the prong from both directions. And that should take off any other roughness that might be there. Yep, that worked good. Now we'll take this wheel off and we'll put on the fine polishing wheel. And this is, I use Fabuluster, which is a white compound.